Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining. My name is Kelly. If we haven't connected before, I am the founder and executive director of Impact Travel Alliance. Impact Travel Alliance is a global community and nonprofit, and our vision is to improve the world through travel. We do this by educating travelers how to explore in a way that has a positive impact on local communities and our environment. As you guys all know, travel is, of course, at a standstill right now, but that doesn't mean that we can't begin practicing sustainable habits while at home. At Impact Travel Alliance, we've always said that sustainability is a lifestyle, and that doesn't start when you're abroad, it happens here at home. So we wanted to put together this panel that brought together different experts from both in and outside of the travel industry to talk about the decisions that you make every day, whether that's what you eat, what you wear, or even what you're thinking, and how that has an impact on the world around you. Each of these experts will bring together tips talking about those different topics and looking at them through the lens of travel and exploring ways that you can start incorporating them while you're at home. And then it makes those habits easier when you are abroad. One of the examples that I shared with our speakers beforehand that was really just a light bulb moment for me was when I went to decrease my single-use plastic in my own life. I was looking at all of the different places where I was using single-use plastic, and one of those was for my shampoo and conditioner bottles. So I made the decision to switch over to using shampoo and conditioner bars. And that was an added perk when I went to travel later and I was packing, and I realized that I didn't have to think about my liquids when I was going to be going through TSA. And that's just an easy example of how it's a little pivot that you make. You're starting to become more aware of all of those decisions, and that has an impact on your travel style at a later date. So without further ado, I am going to kick it off to our first speaker, and I'm very excited to kick it off with her. This is Yvonne, and she's the founder of With Purpose, and she'll be talking about one of my personal favorite topics, which is food.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yvonne Quaresma. I received my master's in food studies. So most people ask me what that is. And basically, I did research and I studied the intersections between food insecurity, and food sustainability. So I'm going to share my screen. I do run With Purpose. And what we do is we are a mobile application that connects eco-conscious consumers to local eco-friendly restaurants. It's basically the product of my research when I was in my master's at NYU. And let me just give you a short little clip here of what we do. So basically, it's a food discovery platform. We categorize the restaurants based on their sustainable practices. You can order directly from the platform, and we gamified the ordering system. So every time you dine at one of our partner restaurants, you earn points, and you can use those points for sustainable practices such as a zero waste cooking class. One of my favorite features is that it measures your carbon footprint whenever you eat out at one of these restaurants. That was the zero waste redemption example. Because our restaurants aren't operating at their full capacity, we have been working on other projects such as the Climate Journal project. So this is a 14-day project in which we connect with eco-conscious consumers, and they, basically use this practice to reflect on their climate anxieties and fears, and then we redirect them to solutions. But prior to finishing my master's, I did quite a bit of traveling. I volunteered for woofing, so I volunteered abroad in Greece and Germany, all throughout Europe, and I had to really prepare to travel because I really believed in sustainability. So if some of you don't know, woofing is it's an organic farming program where you can exchange your time for food and shelter. And I guess I will just start off as, this is a sustainability panel directed towards food, or kind of using my expertise and lens in food. One of my biggest tips for traveling is really to prepare, really understand the landscape of where you're traveling to. I mean, the key to any sort of travel is preparation anyways, but when you are eating, I think that it's super important to understand the economy of the area that you're going to, the local foodways, regenerative agriculture, the farmer situation, etc. So this is a trip that I took to Vietnam a few years ago. And this was, I had to prepare for markets and street food, etc. And I think one of the biggest tips here is that if you're going to a country like Vietnam in Asia, they will have a lot of these markets. So it's very useful to bring your own stasher bag, which is a reusable Ziploc bag, or something, just, a stasher bag isn't very heavy. Bring your own water bottle, things like that, so that you're not, and one thing that I will say about Vietnam and some Asian countries that I've been to is that plastic is used quite often. So if you want to avoid that, then you're going to want to prepare for some markets like this. So that's my first tip. I think preparing to carry your own water bottles, utensils, stasher bags, really. But I say this with, carry your own stuff when you're home. So before you even go travel, start incorporating these habits in your own life. So if you're going to go camping for a weekend, practice doing that already. Practice carrying your own stuff already, so that when you do travel internationally, it's not so cumbersome to add on to your luggage. Another item that isn't typically in our nature is to practice portion control. Even when you're eating out in a restaurant, when you're on a short vacation. I know food is really good. I think that we can all agree that food is delicious, and when we travel particularly, we want to try everything. I don't blame you, I do the same thing, but I do think when you're looking at it from a sustainability perspective, it's, we can only eat so much. We can't eat everything. So if you are ordering for a big group, if you're traveling with a big group, definitely just, see if you could share a meal so that you can taste a little bit of everything. Also, if you're eating out on your own, really try to understand how much you can eat at a particular sit-in. But of course, it should be fun. Traveling and sustainability should be fun. Nobody's perfect, but I do think that's why the key here is preparation and practice. Those are my two key words here. Tip number 3 is try to incorporate plant-based eating. In terms of water and energy usage, it's really important to try and understand that some cultures are not going to have that many plant-based options, but if you can, then if you have to eat at a fast food restaurant when you're abroad, I think plant-based eating is one of the ways that you can make a small difference. So a few things to know before you go on your trip. Understand the recycling policies around the area and the location that you're traveling to, internationally or local. Agriculture, are they big on local farmers? Are they huge? How far is the most popular farmer, or sorry, the largest farm near wherever you're traveling? Also understanding local and seasonal food. So what's seasonal here in the US is very different from a different country, and that's because of weather differences. Also understand where composting and disposal is in that area. And then the last but not least, you want to do some research on the companies or the tour companies that you're supporting. Know where you're putting your money into, so vote with your dollar. That's our little slide again. So along with preparing for your trip, I think the biggest tip that I have is, ask yourself, where does our food come from? Here in the US, the average food, our food travels an average of 1,500 miles. So if you don't know, I'm currently sheltered in place in California. That's halfway from New York City to California. That's pretty intense for food. I think our food travels more than I do in a year. So I think that there are a bunch of guides. One of the most useful ones that I've used here in the US is seasonalfoodguide.org, and also Seafood Watch. So try to understand where your seafood is coming from, what to order at a sushi restaurant. We all know that seafood is a delicacy at most parts of the world, so we want to help and preserve that. And then Scotland has a website called greenerscotland.org. So make sure that you're using resources that are also supported by larger agencies that are updating their website often. As we all know, fruit and vegetable markets, even meat markets around the world are very extravagant, I would say. You can see all the fruits and vegetables, but I will say this is where it's a little bit tricky because, number one, there's a language barrier, so you can't really ask specific questions. But I think there's still a way to support local farmers. One of the reasons to support local farmers is because, right now in the US, the average age of a farmer is 58. So we're actually pushing out that, I guess, like that career in that area. So I think that supporting the local economy is super important when it comes to food, so that you can make both an environmental and a social impact. If you're traveling a little bit long term, one big way that I've supported local farmers and local food systems is being involved with woofing, which is the experience that I had talked about earlier, and also supporting CSAs. So believe it or not, there are tons of CSAs, and they may call it differently depending on what country you're in, but supporting CSAs is very, it's very popular in all around the world. And I think that, if you just do a little bit of research, talk to some locals, they can point you towards the right direction. To the right of my screen, you see photos. What I was woofing, those are just some zucchinis that I had harvested in Greece. And so I know that those were grown organically because I met the farmer and I basically farmed them myself, or I planted them myself. Food origin, so really understanding where your food comes from. Again, this is another woofing experience that I took in Germany in 2016. I thought this was really interesting. I'd never seen a twisted carrot like this, so very organic. And to the very right of my screen, you could see the apple orchards that I worked in. And in order to basically preserve all the apples on the ground, we couldn't serve them in the farmer's market, but we dried them and we actually used them as snacks. So different farmers in different places around the world have different tips and tricks for how they want to preserve food and prevent food waste. And then on the topic of food waste, the third question and the third thing I do before I go travel is I want to understand where our food goes. So what I mean by that is just food disposal. As I mentioned earlier, really studying the landscape of recycling and composting of where you are. If some of you have been to Germany, these photos look familiar. It's called Oktoberfest. It happens every year. And what I thought was fascinating was that they do use, they don't have a lot of plastic in Germany. They have, or at least for Oktoberfest, and they had steins that were reusable. And then for their food, they didn't use like toothpicks, or they didn't use cheese sticks for their boards. They actually used bread and sticks. So I thought that was really interesting. And also in terms of food disposal, do these places that we're eating at have food donations? Do they donate excess food to local food banks? And if they don't, I think this is an opportunity for us to use our consumer power and also to really ask these questions, because maybe these companies or these travel companies that you're visiting, don't think about food disposal until somebody asks them. So really start that conversation. And I think that's one of the bigger tips that I have here too. And some resources just to wrap it all up. My travel pack basically includes water bottles, a stasher bag, bamboo utensils, and straws if you're a big, if you like to taste drinks and, go out. Local food. So the UK has a use less map. So it's a map that tracks grocery stores that sell food in bulk. And they also they track the plastic usage of some stores and restaurants. In Asia, definitely try to buy bulk and use your own storage containers. In Europe, there are a ton of CSAs and woofing opportunities, and also eco food tours. In terms of sustainable restaurants in the US, if you're just eating out locally and you want to have a taste of an international, or if you want an international flavor, but you don't know which restaurants to support, Surfrider Foundation has an awesome program called the Ocean Friendly Restaurants, who we partner with. And then we are also official partners with and consultants for Oceanic Global. So they send out badges to restaurants if they are plastic free. And of course, other certificates that restaurants can earn are through the Green Restaurant Association. And once, the pandemic is over, you'll also be able to download the With Purpose app so that you can find your restaurant. And that was all for me. Thanks for letting me present.
Hey everyone, I am Nikki, and I'm just going to share my screen so you can see my presentation. Perfect. So, oops, it started right in the middle. Spoiler. All right, that's me. I'm Nikki Padilla Rivera, and I'm going to be covering buy, which obviously is something we can definitely keep in mind even when we're grounded as we are right now. I come from the tour operator side of the travel industry. Most recently, I worked for Intrepid Urban Adventures, working with our guides and products in over 160 cities around the world. And my real passion is advocacy for tour guides, who are the most important part of a traveler's journey with any tour company, and yet don't really have a voice in the larger industry. So during quarantine, to be productive, I've actually teamed up with 2 other guide training professionals to launch the Global Guide Alliance, which we hope will be a community for guides unassociated with any brand or certification, just a place for guides around the world to connect and learn. So with that in mind, what we'll be covering today is tourism leakage, the systematic change that we actually need to solve the problem of tourism leakage, and finally, what you can do to make a difference. And this is where we'll be spending most of our time, but I just want to set it up. So, tourism leakage. Probably a term a lot of you are very familiar with, but just so we're on the same page, I'm referring to the problem that most of the money spent on the average vacation does not actually go into the local economy. So, you book your hotel, you book a plane ticket, maybe a fun food tour, make a reservation at a restaurant, and then, you grab a ticket for an observation deck. While you're there, you take some pictures, then you buy some souvenirs, right? So we're kind of looking at your credit card bill. Unfortunately, even though you've been taking up space and using the resources of the destination you're visiting, as little as 10% could actually be staying in that local economy. And the rest is split between, larger, more multinational corporations abroad. And again, I won't go too deep into this. You can look up some of the studies that have been done, but the main culprits are imported goods that foreigners are familiar with. So a hotel not choosing local seasonable vegetables we just learned about, foreign employment, so hiring foreigners that maybe have better English skills than locals, or even foreign ownership, so wealthy people living continents away, investing in things like hotels and restaurants. It's often where this other money is going. From the traveler standpoint, you might ask, why? What's the main barrier to making sure tourism dollars stay in the local economy? It's just it's hard. Research, it takes a lot of work. Again, as Yvonne was saying, preparation, it takes a lot of preparation. It's simply easier to book everything through one booking platform or work with companies whose first language is the same as yours, right? It's easy. So the main chunk of this presentation is going to be some ideas on how to do that research yourself. But just to address really quickly the larger solution that we need, what needs to happen to actually eradicate tourism leakage, right, for the long term? A few things. All stakeholders need to be invested, first of all, and committed to fairly distributing the financial benefits of tourism. And this includes larger corporations like hotels, but also tourism boards, local government, and travelers. And incorporating local economy into the tourism sector, ensuring local employment, for example, giving locals equitable opportunities to jobs by providing extra training that's needed, having set fair wage policies, things like that. So how can we ensure this? Asking specific questions, right? Be that person, be that customer. There's this rumor that to be sustainable, you can't stay at a large brand hotel or you can't travel by plane ever, but there's ways to do all of these things sustainably, right? Just ask about their policies, ask a hotel how many are locally employed or what their fair wage policies are, right? Let's just start holding people to a higher standard. So here's the fun part, for me at least. I actually love doing this research personally. I'm one of those people who plan obsessively so that they can be spontaneous on the trip, right? I don't know if anyone else is like that. Lots of work to be spontaneous. So again, while we're all grounded, now is a great time to do this research. You have the time, presumably. You can even start by experimenting with where you live first, so that when things start opening up, you can make sure your money is helping to bring your local community back up to speed in a sustainable way. So for today, I have 3 simple ways for you to source this information. 1, ask the locals. Seems simple, but a little vague maybe. There's so many different ways to do this, and you probably already have access to more locals than you think. So for example, if you're part of any travel community, Wonderful, which is an amazing travel community for women, the No Madness Travel Tribe, an amazing travel community online for people of color, any Facebook groups around travel, like a huge one like Girls Love Travel, or specific groups around a city or a country. Of course, Impact Travel Alliance, right? These are all groups you're probably a part of that have people from all over the world also a part of. So you can easily hop onto these Facebook groups and just type in, hey, does anyone live in this city, in this country? And connect with a local who would probably be happy to give you some local recommendations. This is always my first stop when I look for hotels, for example, because for me, at least, it's very hard to tell what's actually locally owned or who is employing locals, but a local might have that information. A second thing to do, search specifically for minority-owned businesses, like meaning put that phrase into Google. Now that sustainable has become trendy, it's kind of hard to blindly Google local businesses or sustainable businesses, as these are key SEO words that many companies are building into their marketing. So personally, I found that if I search instead for female-owned or queer-owned, for example, it'll bring up smaller niche blog results or local press about people who specifically sought out these owners who happen to also be local small business owners. Another great resource is the Feminist Travel Guides, and I can write this to Kelly for the follow-up email. But Unearthed Women does these feminist travel guides, so they have tons of mentions of female-owned restaurants and businesses. You can look up Travel Noir is another great site, or Essence's Black Travel Guide. People who've already done this research to find amazing and deserving local business owners. You obviously don't have to be a female or a woman of color to go to these resources. It's just giving you access to writers who are, as I said, doing that research, right? So something you can easily action right now in your own cities. If you're New York City based, before I get to this next point, actually, I would recommend Queen's Eats. They're an Instagram account. It's a couple who lives in Queens, and you won't find this in their advertising, but I just happen to know they specifically source immigrant-owned and female-owned restaurants. So any of their recommendations are really, really great. And in their offline lives, they make an effort in their own city to spread their dollars. So they won't go to the same place every week in an effort to help spread in different neighborhoods in Queens. So again, something you can action now. And finally, choose better souvenirs, right? My favorite golden rule is, would you buy that if you were home? And if the answer is no, don't buy it on vacation. You're gonna regret it. You're gonna regret it. I can't tell you how many cheap, crummy plastic things that looked cool on vacation and I got home seeing it for the junk that it was, right? Do the research, do the preparation, look up what's made locally so you can bring back not only higher quality souvenirs or more unique souvenirs, but ones that are going to be tied automatically with the local economy. It's always a better option, believe me. It could be amber jewelry handmade in Krakow or cool woven baskets in Mallorca. Every city has their things. And again, something you can do locally. Shop small is, of course, a concept we're all very familiar with, but I challenge you to go one further and find out what is locally produced as well, right? Like, what is your region's specialty? Might actually surprise you. So that's all for me. Thanks.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Benita Robledo. I'm an ethical fashion activist and content creator. And so what that means, kind of how I view my role really, is I like to take this deeply complex world of ethical fashion and I break it down and make it really simple and really actionable for the average person. I do this mostly through social media, YouTube, speaking on panels, and I also work with designers to create new ethical products when I see kind of a space in the market that hasn't been addressed. So I'm going to be talking about wear, and wear is incredibly important, what we wear, because fashion is one of the world's largest polluters. It's a $3 trillion industry. It employs billions of people worldwide, most of whom are women of color under the age of 20 or in their early 20s. So if we really change what we wear, even if we just make small changes to what we do, those have huge global impacts. And I love the idea of like what we wear when we travel and how we can learn lessons from that in our everyday life. So the reason it's important what we wear and what we pack specifically when we travel is that's going to affect our carbon footprint, right? The heavier our bag is, the more carbon emissions there will be. So we really have to be smart about what we pack when we travel. And luckily, this is something that we can get lots of practice with at home because, you know, fast fashion and marketing tells us that we need to buy new things all the time and consume. And using travel as a lens for that, we really learned that it's not actually what we have, it's how we use it. So when I talk to people about traveling and what they wear when they travel, the first thing that I tell everybody is pick a palette, right? Pick a theme for what you're going to be wearing on your travel. Are you going for neutrals? Are you going for brights? Are you maybe sticking to black and white? I don't know if any of you watch Schitt's Creek, but the one who plays Moira Rose, she only wears black and white when she travels because everything is going to fit together and it's super easy and she doesn't have to think about it. So you want to pick a palette that you love and is going to work for you. Now, we can practice this at home by decluttering your closet. So that means really go through and take an inventory of your closet and see what don't you love anymore, what doesn't fit, what's not your style, and remove those from your closet. Now, there are lots of very sustainable ways to do this. Don't just send everything to Goodwill. That is actually very unsustainable. So, do a clothing swap with friends, see what you can upcycle, repurpose, but that's a whole other conversation. But there are lots of great tips and resources. You can look on my Instagram if you want. I talk about it all the time. But that's what you want to do. Really take stock of what you have and what is no longer working for you. Because you know what? If it's not working for you today, it's definitely not going to work for you when you travel. Second thing, you're going to want to pick a statement piece, right? Because even though we're out and about, we want things that are going to make us feel beautiful. And I think that there's a misconception with minimalism, or there's a misconception of like, well, if I don't have a lot of things, my closet is boring and my clothes are boring. And I challenge that, right? Like, I rarely buy new things, and I consider myself a maximalist, right? Like, I mean, look at these ridiculous earrings I have on. I love them. But it's because I'm very intentional about what I buy. So a great way to practice this is find a statement piece that you have in your home already, right? So maybe it's a large pair of earrings. Maybe it's like a really fantastic leopard print blazer. I mean, something that just really captures your joy, right? And take that piece and see how many different ways that you can style it. Because what we really want to encourage here is thinking outside the box, really realizing that we can do so much more than we think with a piece. I think we're all pretty trained that, you get one piece and you can only wear it this way. And so this will give you a lot of practice, realizing that you can actually do a lot with everything you own. It happens to be all the time where suddenly I'll put something together in a completely new way, and it's like I just bought this thing for the first time, and it's wonderfully exciting. Another thing is you're going to want to stick to natural materials when you travel. So when you travel, natural materials, they're going to be better at, regulating body temperature, and they're just better for the environment. Natural materials, I'm thinking organic cotton, linen, hemp. Hemp is one of my absolute favorite fabrics. I would say stay away from bamboo materials because there's a bit of greenwashing that happens with bamboo. And there's semi-synthetics like modal, lyocell, rayon. You're going to want to stay away from that, right? If you can picture it growing from the ground, you know what it is, it's a plant, that's what we're going to want to stick with. Also, wool is great. If you're going to a colder climate, it really helps regulate body temperature. It wicks away moisture. And we want to do this because it's just better for the environment. If you look at polyester, it's essentially just plastic. That's just it. Vegan leathers tend to be plastic. So you really want things that are going to last over time. And the way that we can practice this at home, what I highly recommend is everybody go to your closet and take a look at your tags. See what you actually have in your closet. Because I think most people are very surprised that almost everything is going to have polyester in it, either a polyester or a rayon, a nylon. Like all of these fabrics that we think of as easy care are really just plastic. And not only is that a problem because they're made from a non-renewable resource, but also when they get washed, microplastics come off in the wash, end up in our water and polluting our waterways, polluting fish and wildlife, and then we end up ingesting that as well. It's a whole thing. So do yourself, do the planet a favor, do the people that manufacture your clothes a favor, and go for natural materials. You know, if you take something like linen, obviously that's going to be difficult to keep nice and pressed while you're traveling, but that's okay. Get comfortable with a few wrinkles. Like, it's also not a big deal if your clothes are a little wrinkly. You can just say it's a style choice. Next, when you're traveling, really, shoes are such a big part of fashion and one of my personal loves. And it was difficult for me to learn that when you're traveling, you really only need 2 shoes. You need a walking shoe and you need a dress shoe, because we all need to be prepared at a moment's notice to go somewhere fabulous. And you might need an activity-specific shoe, right? So if you're going to Machu Picchu and you're going to be hiking, then you'll want to take a hiking boot, or, you know, maybe you'll be scuba diving, so you'll want some water socks or whatever. But really, for the average trip, you really just need a walking shoe and a dress shoe. And what I love about this tip in particular is it shows us how versatile things can be. We don't need to buy new. We don't need to have a specific item for every specific outfit, right? We can really maximize what we have without having to shop. So to practice this, have a virtual clothing shop, a virtual clothing swap with your friends instead of buying new. We really have to practice not getting new things. I think, you know, as I've mentioned a couple times now, the fashion industry really profits and really functions off of telling us that we need to buy new all the time. And the fact of the matter is 95% of clothes that are thrown in a landfill are could either be upcycled or recycled or donated and reused by someone else. And the average American gets rid of about 85 pounds of clothing a year. So there's really almost never a need to buy something new. So really getting used to that idea of doing more with less and maximizing the amount of use that something gets is really, really important to lowering our carbon footprint. So I highly recommend doing a virtual swap with your friends, since we're all sheltering at home right now, and it's really fun. You can make it an event, right? You can have some music playing. You can get yourself a mimosa, or, have some treats. Like, you can make it fun. I think another big misconception with sustainability in general and ethical fashion as well is that it's sad, or it's not fun, or it's about depriving yourself of something. And it's not about that. It's about finding joy in what you already have. And lastly, when I travel and when I tell people how to travel, I always say you have to pack a shawl or a lightweight scarf. And this is good for both men and women, because a scarf or shawl is your best friend when you travel. It's very light, it doesn't take up a lot of space, and you can use it for everything, right? You can use it to cover up in your bathing suit. You can use it around your head to cover like keep your hair out of your face. If you're going to a country where there might be some cultural modesty issues, right? You can keep your hair covered, or you can use it as a bag, right? You can quickly throw things in there, tie it up, and it's a great little carry-on in case you forgot your stasher bag and you're at the market in Cambodia, right? You can use a shawl for everything. And what's really beautiful about this is it teaches us that, again, things can be multi-purpose. You don't need a specific item for every specific action that you're going to take in a day. And so a great way to practice this at home is anytime that you are getting ready to buy something new, before you do that, ask yourself, do I have something that I could use instead? Is there something that I can repurpose? So, for example, I really wanted a cropped denim jacket for spring. It was in my head. I needed it. I just had to have a cropped denim jacket, but I didn't want to go out and buy one. So instead, I realized, oh, actually in the back of my closet, there was a long denim jacket that I didn't really love anymore because the proportions didn't quite work. I just wasn't really happy with it. So instead of going out and buying one that I saw that kind of had this like raw edge to it that was pretty cool, it's like, oh, I can just literally cut my jacket, crop it exactly the way I want it, throw it in the wash. I get that beautiful frayed edge, and it's exactly what I was hoping for. So, that's just one example of how you can repurpose things. If you have old t-shirts, you can turn them into rags, old towels. All the towels that I use all the cleaning rags that I have in my house are made from my old towels that were just threadbare and kind of, they worked fine, but I didn't love using them when I got out of the shower anymore. So I just cut them up. I have same thing, sheets. I took a pair of sheets recently. I took a flat sheet and I made this like beautiful dress out of it because it was a large piece of fabric, and I tie-dyed it and it looks super cool. So, I think that's like the biggest thing that I want to leave you all with is that you just don't need to buy new things. And so, we can practice that at home right now. And that's going to serve you so well when you travel, because you're going to end up being able to travel with just a little backpack or maybe a little carry-on. And it's going to make your traveling so much more pleasant because then you don't have to lug around a big suitcase. Thank you so much. That's all from me.
Awesome. Thank you all so much, Yvonne, Nikki, and Benita. I had never thought about using a shawl, but I think that's a pretty good idea. So thank you everybody for joining. Thanks also Kelly for having me here. My name is Marcos Salazar, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Be Social Change. I see a lot of people in the chat that are familiar faces and familiar names. For those of you that are not new, our mission is to help people make their greatest impact through events, education, and a purpose-driven community. And we do that through two lenses. We help people build careers in the social impact space, so those that are looking to transition in and learn about social impact and get a job at an innovative nonprofit or socially conscious company, as well as those that are already in a social impact company. How do we amplify their impact? And when Callie asked me to be on this panel, I really started thinking, we don't necessarily have a focus on sustainable travel, although Kelly was on a Future Sustainable Travel event a few weeks ago. But I'm going to go through some ways in which either your career transition or job search can have an impact on sustainable travel, as well as if you're already in a social impact company or just company in general, what are things that you can do to make a positive impact when it comes to sustainable travel? And it's going to touch upon some of the things that we heard about earlier. So when you are exploring or transitioning into a social impact career, there's a couple things to keep in mind. The first thing that I always tell people to do is really focus on mission and value. So when you are looking to work for an organization, that's making a positive impact in the world, you really, really want to get clear about what your mission is and what your values are and what's important to you, not only from a functional work standpoint, but also from a culture, from a value standpoint in terms of what this organization stands for and how they're making an impact. So really getting clear on what your mission and value is and how that aligns with an organization. Culture is a huge piece as well, because the number one reason that people leave a job is a bad manager or a bad culture. So you want to be able to get clear on the type of culture the organization has. You could be working for a company that says and focuses on a social impact mission. This is the case with a lot of nonprofits that are very mission driven, but they could have a bad culture, or they may not be treating their employees well. So you want to get the inside scoop on the culture. This could be doing web research. It's having coffee dates with people within the organization, as well as possibly people who have previously worked for the organization. And then you want to get a deeper sense of the social impact practices. And I think this is where the impact on sustainable travel comes into play, is thinking about what are the suppliers, where are they getting the basic elements of the office? Is it local? Is it something that's close to where the organization works? I think the thing that was really interesting that Yvonne pointed out is I think about my carbon footprint when it comes to things that I eat, and things that come from California all the way to New York, where I'm from, and all the energy that needs to be put into getting that food to where I am in New York. So thinking about, does the organization buy local? Does it work with local suppliers? And that's going to have eventually an impact on the local economy. So these are just some quick tips for those of you that are looking to explore or transition into a social impact organization or social impact job. And for those of you that are job seekers on the in the chat, I'm going to go through some quick career pro tips, job searching tips. And this really ties to what we talked about in terms of mission and vision. More and more organizations I continually see are reading cover letters more than resumes. And the reason why is this is where you can get a sense of, is this person clear on the type of impact they want to have? Do they understand our organization and our mission? Are they aligned with values? So never underestimate the importance of a cover letter. And then the last kind of pro tip is that applying online should be your last step in the job search process. It may be the place where you find jobs and find organizations, but you really want to network your way into an organization by meeting or finding someone and connecting with someone either that works there or someone who knows someone that's there, and having your resume passed on. So for those of you that are working within an organization or working even as a freelancer, but possibly working with other organizations, how do you become a social intrapreneur? So how do you innovate within an organization and help to make it more sustainable? One way that you can really think about is looking at all, and this is the same thing in terms of doing company research, but also within your organization, is what are the suppliers and vendors that they're using at all different levels, from the paper you buy to the snacks that you may have in your snack room. Is it something that's local? And then the other thing is that, are they working with socially conscious organizations? So I'm going to switch my screen a little bit. And one place that that's an easy thing to do is, how many B Corps is your company engaging with when it comes to getting their supplies? So B Corp has a really, really awesome Find a B Corp directory, and you can go through and see from accounting services to whether they're carbon neutral, to catering, all kinds of different parts of a business that you may be using. Oh, let me see something real quick. It looks like my screen share is paused. Are people able to see my screen? Okay, good. Just checking in terms of Zoom. So just thinking about all the different vendors and working with whoever is part of HR and part of IT, whoever the people that are focused on purchasing and procurement, and seeing how many organizations that they're working with are socially conscious, and can you transition them to be B Corps. The other thing that I would also just take a look at, and these are kind of basic 101 in terms of improving energy usage, are they working with an organization such as Clean Choice Energy? So they're partners of ours where they transition and they work in New York, for example, with Con Edison, the main energy provider, and you can switch your energy from being from coal to wind and solar, and it's actually at no cost. It's just making that switch. So just working with whoever is dealing with kind of the energy and facility work, and see if you can change who your supplier is. Another thing is we partner with another awesome B Corp called Carbon Credit Capital, and this can be both for individuals as well as for organizations. So and I'll kind of switch my screen. And then I'll put their link in the chat. So for when we were doing events in person at Be Social Change, we worked with Carbon Credit Capital, and they did an entire audit of everything we do when it comes to our events, and then figured out how much energy we use, and then we charge a certain amount for our tickets, and then also take a little bit of a loss that then puts that to offset our carbon footprint. So this is a really good company where they can actually go into your organization, see everything that you're doing from a sustainability standpoint, and try to make everything that you do carbon neutral. And one of the things that you can do is, and you can also do this as you see on an individual level, you can do travel flight offsets here, you can do individual offsets, and then you can also do organization offsets. So what we do is the money that we put some of the money for each ticket purchase to plant trees and work with a nonprofit to plant trees around the world to offset our carbon footprint. So there are definitely third-party organizations that can help you have your organization be much more sustainable. And then the last tip that I think is really interesting is that if your company is providing any type of travel benefits, it might be really interesting to have the HR or benefits person to connect with sustainable travel companies and have them as preferred vendors, or having some type of partnership with sustainable travel companies or companies that you know are doing things on a local level or in terms of trips that they're having a positive impact when it comes to kind of these three elements that I think about sustainable travel. Helping the local economy, being sustainable when it comes to energy, and then preserving any type of cultural heritage. So really thinking about, can you make those partnerships with with your company? And then just to round it off, I just wanted to share a couple events that I think could be useful for people that we're having up to Be Social Change. So similar to what some of the things that Yvonne pointed out, we're going to have a Future of Sustainable Future of Sustainable Food event on June 18th. We're going to have a facilitated networking event with a lot of nonprofits globally, some of those within the sustainable travel industry as well. So a couple of events that might be useful for you all. So thank you, and now I'm just gonna hand it off.
I'm gonna jump in really quick right here. We have one more speaker who is going to take us up to the end of our session today. I'm gonna put our Facebook group into the chat. So I know that there's plenty of Q&As that are coming in. We'll do our best to get to everything, but I definitely wanna make sure that Sophia has time to present. So if you want to keep the conversation going, feel free to join the Facebook group.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, all the speakers, to Kelly for having me here today. My name is Sophia Heider-Hawk. For those of you that don't know me, I have my own company called Papilia, and we design and facilitate diversity and social inclusion strategy, workshops, trainings. What makes the work that I do special, in my opinion, is that I'm also a yoga instructor and a yoga life coach. And so I incorporate a lot of wellness into all the work I do. So today I will be sharing a presentation that I share with my clients on think and how to think sustainably. And this framework that I use is called People, Place, and Purpose. And the purpose of this framework is to think in a way where you can self-reflect about who you are as a person. And what you can do then is take your thoughts and you can use them into how you'd like to, into the context of travel. So the first thing I'd encourage you to do is think about the people that you have in your life. Ask yourself, am I surrounding myself with the right people, and who are they? And taking some time to think about who those people might be, especially at a time that we are in right now. Taking the extra step to ask yourself about your travels. Think about any genuine connections you'd like to make when you travel. Why will these connections matter to you? The thing that I feel that is so exciting about travel is we go to places to genuinely connect. And this is a very important place to start, to think about how you would like to do that. Place. Thinking about your surroundings. Are you happy with your surroundings? And surroundings can take place from a physical standpoint. They can take place from a mental standpoint. Again, taking that time to self-reflect. In a context of travel, thinking about the places that you want to explore and really paying attention to why you want to go there. What is it about this place that will take you to this the Zen place in your heart? Why will it motivate you to be a better person? Thinking also about your purpose. Asking yourself if you're satisfied with the purpose and personal mission that you've set for yourself. And these are not questions to take lightly, or, it takes some time to spend to really think about your purpose that you have set out for yourself. But in the context of travel, really think about your purpose and what fulfills you, what makes you happy in your life, what fuels that fire that you have. In the context of travel, think about if these experiences that you have in the destination will fill your purpose. And the reason why this framework can be so useful is because it helps you, again, self-reflect and think about who you are as a person, thinking about why you do what you do. And it can also help you be a better and more conscious traveler. Going through this in the interest of time. So again, I encourage you to take some notes later on and to try this practice at home. Things that you can do also right now to reconnect, as some of my fellow panelists have talked about. Taking that time right now to reconnect with your friends who live in different parts of the world. Ask them how they're doing, first of all. I think that's the most important thing, to establish that genuine connection and maybe reestablish a long lost connection that you may not have in a long time. Ask them about what's going on in their hometown. I have a good friend of mine who lives in South Africa, and I frequently talk to her, just asking her what's going on right now, a way to learn about a different culture and also to connect. Ask them about what they love about tourists coming into their town. I know a lot of people are wanting, they want to see visitors come in for economic development. But the important thing here also is to ask what they wish tourists could be more mindful of when they're visiting. And that could maybe spark some ideas about how you can be a better traveler when you go to different places. Not only in when you go actually to different places, but also in your own hometown. May help you be conscious of your day-to-day lifestyle. Also, another way I encourage you to think about how you like to frame questions with your friends, or maybe even some of the Facebook groups that Nikki had mentioned earlier, is to caveat questions by saying, I'm trying to learn more about X place. Can you help me understand this? And that way people will want to, they'll be more forthcoming with sharing their tips and their tricks about who they are, about their culture. Some resources to check out as a way to connect with different cultures. I found Google Arts and Culture actually is a really neat resource to look into. They have a lot of different arts virtual tours that you can take place, some really neat tips to learn about different cultures. Authentic Food Quest is also an interesting blog that I found to be really interesting to learn about not only different food in different countries, but also you can get some ideas on recipes that you may want to try out at home. Reading is a fun thing to be able to do nowadays, but there are two resources that I have listed here called From Epic Reads and A World Learning Post. And there are books from different cultures, different places that may pique your interest. What's also interesting is that by reading books from different cultures, you not only learn about the places, but you learn about etiquette. You can learn about places that you may want to go to. You can talk to your friends about certain cultures that you're curious about. We're all watching something on Netflix or Amazon Prime, so perhaps finding a documentary from a different country that you may not have thought about doing before. Again, paying attention there to intonations, in tone, in language, and that could be something that you do together with friends. You can talk about different cultures in that way. Again, thinking about your own culture and paying attention to how a culture is different than yours can also pique some really interesting conversations and can help you maybe be a little more thoughtful in how you choose to travel in the future. If you are close to a established cultural area, like Little Italy or a Chinatown, these are also really interesting cultural hotspots to learn about. And even if you're not near one, perhaps looking up one that could be close to you so you can learn about what's around you, learn about different cultures in your own context. Lastly, I've in response to what's been going on, I've created something online. It's a 14-day virtual self-care retreat. And it's a way to not only, again, self-reflect upon yourself, but there are little tips and tricks that you can take to connect with people that are around you. So I know we didn't have that much time, but I again thank you so much for your time here today.
Thank you so much, Sophia, and to all of our other panelists. What I love about all of this is just remembering that sustainability is a journey, and all of these little tips and tricks that you pick up along the way really open your eyes to the other ways that you can continue to become more and more sustainable and have impactful decisions for the world around you. I talked about shampoo and conditioner bars at the beginning of my talk, and one thing that I love about thinking about that concept is I never considered the weight of shampoo bottles being shipped from location to location. So like what Marcos was talking about with food and how that's being shipped over from California, I stopped using shampoo bottles because it made sense for me to reduce my single-use plastic. But in doing that, I realized that's also a big impact on the environment as well, because I'm not shipping as much weight from location to location. So it's all of these little things that add up over time. One of my personal favorite ideas about sustainability is just knowing that it's not about being perfect all of the time. It's about so many different people being imperfect in their sustainability. And that's what adds up to a lot of mass change over time. To wrap everything up, I did want to give one quick introduction to Maria from Humanity Unified. Each of our events is a pay what you can model. And what we're doing with these free events, and for anyone who is donating, we are using those proceeds to go to at-need tourism-related projects around the world. And Maria is the co-founder of Humanity Unified. So I'm going to let her give a quick introduction on her nonprofit, and then we'll wrap it up from there.
Thanks so much, Kelly. It's great to be here. So Humanity Unified's mission is poverty alleviation through education, food security, and sustainable development. Come July, we will be working in consultative status with the United Nations Economic and Social Council to achieve 8 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And in January, we launched Rwanda's first food forest, which was a great accomplishment for our organization because it incorporates an organic form of agriculture that mimics a wild forest. So fruit trees, vegetables, and medicinal herbs will be planted to feed the local community. This type of agriculture nourishes both people and the planet. And Rwanda is dealing with severe soil erosion and land degradation issues. So this is really, really important, specifically in leading the way forward towards a more sustainable way of growing our food. So I know we don't have a lot of time, but I want to thank you for just allowing me to talk a little bit about that. Our hope is to continue to educate communities on how to grow food sustainably, and also to hopefully build more food forests in Africa and throughout the world. So thank you. It was an honor to be here.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. As I mentioned, we'll keep the conversation going in our Facebook group, and have a great day. I really appreciate everyone joining.